which is a nice segue because you, like me, are a very avid reader. I know you've done stuff even about your reading before online and everything. I have to ask, I don't know if I know this. Best book you've read?
Hmm. It's a tough question because yeah, I've had periods where I've been sitting down reading heaps of books. So I've gone through quite a few. So, but yeah, like you mentioned, sort of in between, we spoke earlier about the original idea for the podcast, and then a year and a half later, actually starting it. So that was probably in September this year. But in between that period, I had an Instagram. It's still there. It's called James Notes, and I was just kind of writing and making stuff in there about different books that I'd read, which was a good experience. But I'm not really active in that anymore. But I think that was maybe one of the catalysts as well for starting the podcast. But anyway, back to your question. So, favorite book of all time, and I think it's hard to narrow it down to one. And I think it even would, if I'm going to even recommend one to someone, it would depend on the situation and
Person.
things like that.
Yeah.
But I think one that I really enjoyed was High Performance Habits by Brendan Bouchard, I think his name
Bouchard?
is. Yeah.
I've heard of Brendan Bouchard, but I haven't
Yeah.
read the book.
His book,
I haven't heard of
High
the book
Performance
before.
Habits, I think that is was really great to read. And it's all about, at least one of the main lessons I got from it was like, and I'm not a messiah. I don't like practice it all the time. Like I'm still human, right? So, but
Healthy
yeah,
disclaimer. Yeah,
but
got
like
it.
one of the things he talks about is like intentionality. So how can you be
Big word.
intentional in everything that you do, or at least let's say you come home from work and you're about to go into like see your family or whatever it is. What are you trying to get out of that experience? Are you trying to, who do you want to be? Like maybe it's as a dad or as a partner or whatever. Who are you trying to be in that scenario? If you go into a meeting at work, like who are you trying to be in that meeting? And really reflecting on that idea of like even like what's your aim to get out of this? Who do you want to be, like what do you want to be known as? Things like that, and just reflecting on that quite a lot before you go into different situations. So even if it's like taking, and again, I don't do this really often, but it's something that I'm trying to work in more. It's a good concept, and I think you can even listening to what I'm saying, note that it would be a good idea to start doing. Like I think that's a really cool idea, and it's like, yeah, before you do something, what's the actual aim of this? Why am I doing it? What do I want to get out of this experience? Even if it's just something short, like a half an hour meeting. I think coming back to that often is a good exercise, and one that can add that 5-10% onto everything that you do, and really make sure your authentic self is shining through in
I
situations.
find that fascinating because I know you're very across Cal Newport, and I'm sure you've read a lot of books around that concept of high performance habits, all that stuff. So it sounds like that one stands out amongst that literature. And is that the reason, I'm assuming? Because the emphasis on intentionality in just very explicit terms.
Because yeah, I think the intentionality idea comes into almost everything. Like whether it's speaking about productivity just before deciding what you're going to do, that's being intentional. How am I showing up into certain places? How am I showing up to the podcast? How am I showing up at work? Things like that, and really not letting yourself fall into this kind of haze almost, where you're just going through the day and just doing whatever comes, and like just you're not really setting the direction of your life almost. And so it really is quite fundamental, I think. And it leads into a lot of those ideas about like productivity, normal habits, a lot of other concepts I think are really rooted in this idea. And again, it is hard to remember that. But
What a challenge. And it is a bit because sometimes there's also some level of things flow in life too, as well. So it is not all just like, I'm on. It's all me pushing all this energy all the time. So it does combine with this natural flow, maybe a bit, if you, for lack of a better term, some of that stuff Darren was talking about. And it's some sort of funny combination, but it is one of my favorite words personally, intentionality. It's a good word to describe things, like the attitude and the posture you take towards things, isn't it? Because it's not specific to whatever your pursuit, your main interest is, your career type, whatever. Because there's nothing, no matter what you're doing, if you're a stay-at-home parent or a CEO of the World Incorporated, you can be intentional. In fact, you probably should be intentional about what you're doing, I guess, because time's finite. So if you're not being intentional, like your agenda gets set by external factors rather than factors you've consciously chosen and opted into, which is very, very powerful,
Mm.
very important over the long run. Yeah, it's fascinating.